Google, Zane. And
I
we
think we are
are
broadcasting.
broadcasting live on Google.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. This is Dallas Winston, BloodyElbow.com. Zane Simon, mi compadre, also of BloodyElbow.com. We're going to roll quickly through the main card of Bellator 135, Warren versus Galvao. Zane, overall thoughts on the card?
It's kind of our typical Bellator offering right now. Some recognizable names on the main card, not much in the way of recognizable names on the undercard, and the main card guys aren't even like it's nothing that's gonna get anybody really excited. It should be fun enough for a Friday night, but not like their tentpole shows where they're obviously trying to stack a lot more talent.
And maybe this is a little bit harsh, but I feel like I was expecting a little more. I mean, the title fight I'm down with Warren and Galvao. Although to me, I don't know what the inner workings are, but I think Rafael Silva is should have been due for the first crack at Warren. They fought for number one contender spot. I don't remember who Warren was supposed to fight, but it ended up to be a short notice deal. Rafael Silva cuts a shit ton of weight and really struggled with it, plus had trouble getting over into the country. I think he only had 24 hours to cut an obscene amount of weight, like over 20 pounds, and still gave Warren a really good run. The Galvao thing, it's a good rematch. I'm into it, but is that just me? To me, Rafael Silva, along with Dantas, are the top contenders for the title.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's also just one of those things where I always think unless it's like a fight that people were like, oh my god, that was amazing, then you shouldn't do a rematch that quickly if you can avoid it. So I'm kind of okay with them doing another fight with Galvao just because that fight, last time that fight happened it was 2011, so it's a totally different fight this time around probably. And the Rafael Silva fight, like, yeah, it could be a different fight because of the cut and all that, but we just saw that fight and it was good, but it's not a fight where I immediately am thinking, like, oh, I have to see the rematch of that right this minute.
First Galvao Warren match was controversial. A lot of people thought that Galvao deserved the nod. So I agree with everything you said. Do you feel like maybe behind the scenes this might be an intention of setting up, if Galvao wins, another crack at Dantas being the teammate, friend versus friend thing that they could market?
Maybe. I can't imagine Galvao taking that fight again. Like, the way he sounded after that fight with Dantas was just like, this was the worst mistake I've ever made. Basically, that was how it sounded. It was just like, I can't believe we fought. I felt terrible about it. It made no sense. I didn't like it at all. That was a terrible mistake. Like that seemed like his reaction after that fight.
And he fought like it was a bad mistake too. And conversely, Dantas seemed to be like all shits and giggles about it.
Yeah, which I mean, I think maybe if you're Galvao, that's even worse. Like it's one thing if you're both afterward, like, oh man, we shouldn't have done that. But if you're like you're feeling that way, and the other guy's like, hey, I got my belt.
Yeah, it was a little bit rough. One more, I don't want to be too controversial, but when I looked at this card, kind of made me reflect when Scott Coker came in and took over. It seemed like Bellator had a lot of momentum. They hadn't just signed, but they had Rampage. They had some big names. They were doing
Hmm.
a lot of shows. It seemed like they were peaking, and everyone hoped and expected Coker to come in and carry that momentum in I guess just maximize it, make it better. To me, I think they've lost some serious steam since Scott Coker took over. Not only because they've gone to a relaxed schedule, but this card isn't bad. But the last few have been not great either. So this card alone isn't terrible, but the fact that they could have really used a big one to kind of pick things back up and they didn't is a little depressing to me. Is that just
Well,
me?
134 was a good big one. That was like their last that the last event was a big tentpole show. That was the British Invasion card.
Right, and that was a pretty good one. You're right. Yeah.
So, like, they did just have one. I think the problem, though, is that, like, and I think it speaks to the fact that you don't even remember it. It's, like, it felt like the whole product would be coming up all together. And even we'd have these big tentpole shows, but the other shows would be, like, sort of our regular, like, like we remember Strikeforce events where there was a lot of name value and a lot of excitingly booked fights, and it was always something to watch even if they weren't like big names. And instead it feels like the tentpole events, however many of them are those shows, but then everything else is maybe even not like like it's Strikeforce challengers, and it's not even always that level necessarily. Like we haven't quite got that product yet, so that these smaller events feel like an even lesser version at times of what we were getting with the classic Bellator season.
Totally agree. And even with this season, it was I mean, how hard would it be every week to stack up a card? If you have one
Yeah,
fighter pull out, it gets chaotic. But hell, they had a presence then. Even if the cards didn't have huge name recognition all the time, there are always a couple, one, two, maybe three. And even towards the end, I always talk about this. They started to even load up the undercard. I remember one of these vivisections, we talked about all the main cards and like four undercard fights. And I'm somewhat I guess what I'm saying is mildly disappointed. I expected things to really take off when Coker took over, and if anything, to me, it seems like interest and excitement for Bellator has dropped off.
it's definitely, I don't know. It's a weird situation. I think it's going to be one of those situations that hopefully we're just looking at a transition period where they are still trying to figure out what fighters they can get and want to bring in and who they want to develop and how. Like that part's taking some time. It's like, who are the stars we can build and who are the people we want to bring in to build them.
And the shows don't really have any continuity.
No.
Before it was a tournament, and if anything,
Yeah.
it was the complaint was too much, continuity. I think they could use a little of that now. It seems like they're kind of, I don't want to say cobbling together, but doing one-off shows without necessarily like
Yeah.
something that gets you excited or anticipating the next. Although, okay, so let me rattle off here. Oh wait, okay? You're going to talk about a couple bouts on the undercard.
Yeah.
I'll let you do that, but let me rattle off what the four bouts on the main card are. Main event, newly minted champion Joe Warren, baddest man on the planet, taking on Marcus Galvao. Realizing now this is the co-main event, perhaps this would be a number one contender bout. Hideo Takoro, love, watch him anytime, even though you can't really say he's in his prime anymore. But he's taking on LC Davis, the resurgent now bantamweight LC Davis. Maybe winner gets a crack at the title. New acquisition Francis Carmont from the UFC, taking on Guilherme Viana. And then the opener is Ryan Couture versus Dakota Cochran. So before we launch into it, go ahead and do your thing on the undercard
All
fights that you're
right.
interested in.
This undercard, like a lot of the recent ones, isn't that great, but there are a couple of fighters I'd like to talk about just briefly. The first one is Neil Ewing, who is one of the rare up and coming light heavyweight talents out there. You know, big, powerful American light heavyweight, 5-0, 29. Um, I haven't gotten to see a lot of tape on him because, like a lot of American fighters, camps and managers tend to make sure that a lot of tape doesn't get online so that they can't be scouted and things like that. But it's definitely a fighter I'm interested to see. Looks like he's got a 1-0 guy to beat up on the prelims, so I expect, I'm excited to see him. And then the last fight on the prelims, Emmanuel Sanchez versus Alejandro Villalobos. Sanchez is a up and coming Rufus Sport prospect. Pretty much fights in that Rufus Sport style. Aggressive kickboxer, aggressive grappler. He's only 24, 9-1 over his career. Looks like a very decent, promising young fighter, and he's getting a decent matchup in a vet, Alejandro Villalobos, who's just kind of um, a fun kickboxing sort of wrestle boxer. on the regional circuit, doesn't really have a great wrestling game, doesn't really, is a fun kickboxer, high output, should make for a good showcase fight for Sanchez to build him up as a fun fighter. So I think that's really about that. I'm interested in. It looks like a decent chance for them to build somebody new.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 bouts on the preliminary card that will stream live and free on bloodyelbow.com. I'll do play-by-play for the probably just the main card for this one. So you're welcome to stop on over. Again, that's 6:30 Eastern time, Bloody Elbow for the prelims, and then on Spike TV, starting at 9 Eastern, we'll have our 4 main card fights. We'll start. Wait, that's in the wrong. Sorry, I have the wrong order here. I believe it's listed differently depending on where you look, but Dakota Cochran and Ryan Couture are going to open up the card. Not a terrible fight. Not what I would call a barn burner. Um, Ryan Couture is in a tough spot. Obviously, big shoes to fill. But I think he's done pretty well. He's become really crafty. He doesn't really do anything amazing or not super explosive, but he's smart. He's tough. Um, uh, I'd say the bulletproof pick generally for him is rear naked choke, and I don't think he'll get it maybe in the first round in this one, but I do like him and probably by sub in this fight. Your thoughts?
Hmm. This is a tough one for me because these are guys who have basically both consistently failed against a certain level of competition.
And Cochran's been really on and off, even against
Yeah.
kind of the same level of competition.
Like and I would say that Cochran in general has better wins than Ryan Couture, even though Couture has that big win over KJ Noons. It was a fight that like you can't really watch that and be like, oh no, Couture really beat KJ Noons. I mean, Dakota Cochran has legit wins over Jamie Varner, over Joe Stevenson, over uh,
Escudero.
Efrain Escudero, Anton Kuivanen. He's beat Marcus Levesser. He's beaten some guys that have been in the UFC. Not all of them successfully, but he's really and a lot of those guys are really good, powerful athletes, and Cochran is too. The problem is that other than being a really powerful athlete, he's not a lot else. Like he's got all the athletic tools, he just doesn't have a lot of the technique. He's not a great wrestler, he's not a great striker, he's not a great grappler. Whereas on the other hand, Couture doesn't really have any of the athletic tools, but he's a really scrappy fighter and a pretty decent grappler. So I don't know. It's a question for me. I mean, I'm going to actually go with Cochran on this one. I think that I have more faith in him using that athleticism to bully Couture, but Couture's tough, and if Cochran makes mistakes, Couture will capitalize. So it's a tough fight.
Almost a coin flip, really. And I mean, I'm glad you went through that entire list. I remembered some of those, but that means overall, Dakota Cochran, I mean, as far as overall level of competition, is a giant step above Ryan Couture. To me, I thought Couture did a pretty good job of improving his striking. It wasn't huge, but you could tell it was getting better. And then it kind of got to a point where it kind of planed off. I think that would be extremely valuable if he could frustrate Cochran from range and not necessarily have to, grapple with him the entire time. But I do agree. I think Couture is going to be a little lankier. I don't have their size or stats or whatever in front of me, but um, I think Ryan's the smarter fighter, maybe the more consistent, and I'm not really sure. But I'll stick with Couture. We'll keep it split to keep it somewhat interesting. Betting lines have Couture as a slight favorite, -114 to -125. Cochran. Oh, wait a minute. Cochran's in the negative in a few. So Cochran's anywhere from -106 to +105. So even when he's in the minus, Couture is favored slightly on those same betting sites. I can't really disagree with that. Francis Carmont versus Guilherme Viana. What do you know about Viana? Does he fight out of Pedro Hizzo's team?
He fights out of, let's see.
I think Sherdog had it as like
Yeah,
Hizo J.
Huas Vale Tudo. No, Huas Vale Tudo. So that is where Pedro Hizo came up, and it's one of those camps I think that's like maybe got connections to Team Nogueira and to Black House as those California gyms. There are like several Brazilian gyms in California, or that Brazilians that train a lot in California, and they kind of mix together. And um, yeah, I mean he definitely trains with a lot of good classic fighters. He just missed out on our top 10 light heavyweight prospects in the world. He was basically like 11 for us, and he was on the most recent season of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil as a heavyweight, and what were you say? Sorry.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That he. So what weight class is this fight at?
this is a light heavyweight fight, and he's a light heavyweight, but he was fighting at heavyweight for Tough Brazil because he's a big light heavyweight. He's 6'4", big powerful frame. And I was actually really shocked that he didn't get the call up back to the UFC. Like that's actually still an area that Bellator does surprisingly well at, is bringing up promising light heavyweights and heavyweights like Neil Ewing on the undercard. I mean, how many recent light heavyweights have we seen the UFC grab? It's not many. So
So
I'm
Carmont is going up to light heavyweight for this fight.
Yep.
Hmm.
Which
I
I
mean,
mean, I think is a good choice for him. Middleweight, he's a huge middleweight, and light heavyweight outside of the UFC isn't a very deep division. So a guy like him that's as big as him might as well take a chance not having to cut as much and see what he can get done there.
hmm, didn't realize that. Interesting. Yeah, and so Viana one loss to Rodney Show Enough Wallace. Is that right? He
Yep.
was actually a really tough dude, former UFC, or I think Bellator just, or was it the UFC that brought him back again to fight somebody?
No, he was in Bellator a bit, and then now he's back on the regional circuit in Canada.
And that's a guy that no one will really know, but he's actually fought some big names. He's a tough cat. What's your pick on this one? To me, I mean, I was able to watch a little bit of tape on Viana, and definitely agree he's a good prospect. But to me, Carmont's just going to be a little too experienced and polished for him at this point. Although I'm not ruling out, a win for Viana, but
I think the big thing for me is whether or not Carmont has started to really fall off, because he's starting to get. I mean, not only is he in his 30s, he's 33, which isn't that old, but he started fighting way back in 2004, so he's been at this a while. And at some point, like the end of his UFC run, they may have all been legit losses, and Aldo Souza, Vidal, Talis Latis, but they were like him falling off more and more. Like the Souza fight was really competitive, the Dalloway fight was somewhat competitive, and then Talis Latis just knocked him out. So I do wonder about that. I think that Carmont has a better skill set he has a skill set to beat Viana, who's really kind of a wrestle, ground and pound guy. Got good takedowns, really solid top control, but not the most consistent striker. Carmont should be able to deal with that, but I think I'd pick Carmont, but it's a definitely like it's a fight that I would love to see Viana win, and he has the tools to do it. It's just whether or not he's developed far enough yet with his striking.
so to me, Carmont's going to play his range game. Not that he's only going to stay out there and be afraid to go inside, but am I incorrect that Viana really is going to have to, or generally will be successful if he can get in the phone booth at close range? And I think that's going to be tough against Carmont.
Yeah, I think that Viana's best strategy would be to get inside and take Carmont down. I mean, he's not way taller than Carmont at 6'4" to 6'3", but Viana's like he's a legit sized light heavyweight. There's no way he's cutting down to middleweight ever. He's a huge, strong dude. So if he can use that size advantage, then he could definitely take a win.
And that's why a lot of people got annoyed with Carmont because I don't remember some of his earlier fights. I don't remember which one, but he used his range almost too effectively. Just kept people outside and then didn't do a ton with them. But regardless, Carmont's the biggest favorite on the card, minus 306 up to minus 335. Viana, the underdog, at plus 245 to plus 275. FYI, I peruse best fight odds. I think most of us do when we rattle off betting odds for each show. Co-main event: Hideo Takoro versus LC Davis. Um, LC Davis looking pretty good at bantamweight, huh? One loss, I believe,
Yeah, he lost to Ryan Roberts in a 5 round split decision, and that's it.
and that's what was that for victory? That's when
Yeah.
he dropped down, won the title, and then ended up losing the
Yep.
title back to him.
Yep. That's it.
What do you know about Ryan Roberts?
Not much. He's not a guy that I has really come up on my radar, especially like he's been really a journeyman over his career. I mean, he's 36, he's 20 and 10. Um, it seems like one of those guys, he's been fighting since 2006, which means that he's probably just reaching like his prime now. Like he's been maybe a little bit of a late bloomer in MMA. Um, Kind of guy that really struggled probably early on, took a bit too deep a step up. He had a UFC fight back in 2008, just 2 years into his pro career, and then was fighting guys like Dwayne Ludwig in 2009. Off of had a big losing streak, but his only loss since 2010 is to Zach Makovsky. So
Hmm.
I think he's a guy that probably just took a long time to develop and really struggled early in his career.
All right, I'm gonna have you take the reins for just a quick second.
All
For
right.
those who don't know, I was sharing this story with Zane. I'm house and dog sitting for my mom and dad. And when I left this giant moose of a dog home, he got up on the counter and ran around with a bunch of Starbucks coffee. And I was worried at first he made a mess, but now, considering the way he's acting, I think he's a little hopped up on caffeine at the moment. So I'm just going to go throw him out the door for a minute. Um, I don't have a ton to offer on this, anyways. Other than that, I think LC Davis is kind of the clear and obvious, maybe slash easy favorite because of his skill set. He's such a good wrestler, and he's become really good at transitioning from striking and getting into the clinch and working his takedowns. I think it's a tough matchup for Takoro, but Takoro's always all action. He's always fun to watch, and I do think he's the kind of guy that if Davis doesn't stick to a real I guess if he's not vigilant to a real smart game plan, Takoro will take anything that you can that you'll give him. Is there a big size difference? I know Davis. I'm guessing he's going to be a little bit longer. What, a couple inches?
So, well, let's see. Takoro's 5'7", Davis is 5'8", so not
Oh,
really.
not too much. Betting odds for this one: Davis heavy favorite, minus 306 to minus 325. Takoro. I wonder. Let me finish. He's about plus 235 to plus 265. I thought, semi off topic. It was brilliant when Coker at Strikeforce worked out the strategic alliance with the Dream Fighters and brought in Aoki and Kawajiri. Japanese MMA is not what it used to be, but I still would like to see him use those connections and bring in fighters like Takoro. I mean,
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, there are still places to get talent, but it's all a question of how. I mean, it sounds like more and more their Russian connection is kind of falling apart. Is kind of what I'm hearing lately, and it would be nice to maybe see them get into Japan a little more, or maybe yeah, I don't know. Like it's tough because I think some of these regions, there are some that have fallen off heavily, and then others that are really focused on trying to keep and maintain what talent they have, or are developing talent in really limited ways. Like France actually is developing some good MMA fighters, but they their ground rules really don't make them translate well outside because they don't allow ground and pound. So their grappling games, like they can be good grapplers, but they're not set up to deal with strikes on the ground and stuff like that. Yeah, they're in a tough. I mean, it's tough because yeah, I'd like to see them get more Japanese fighters, but Japan, like they're really not developing a lot of that talent anymore. So you're talking about bringing in 40-year-old, you know, 50 fight vets like Takoro.
In the legit ones, the UFC is actually doing a pretty good job of swallowing up at this point. So, all right, let's go on to the main event. I'll let you lead it off, and I'm just the door's right here. I'm going to throw this big moose out. But
All right.
Marcus Galvao versus Joe Warren, your show.
All right, yeah. And I am picking Davis too. Just that's to get it to give that out there before we move on. But Joe Warren versus Marcus Galvao. Warren's one of those guys. I feel like I have to say this every time we talk about him. Who I really kind of wrote off early in his career as like, oh, he's too old. He looks really wooden. I don't think he'll have the time to develop. He's calling himself the baddest man on the planet. That's really annoying. Even if he won a title really early, he lost it pretty quickly as well. But he's kind of proven that fighter development is fighter development by and large. Guys, as long as they stay in the gym and can stay healthy, they tend to develop on the same track no matter what. He looks better than ever right now. He's winning. He's fighting really well, and um, I got to take him over Marcus Galvao, who is a fighter who, even though he's younger than Warren, has been fighting a lot longer, and that mileage really seems to be kind of, I don't know if it's catching up with him, but it's just he's got a game that is good when it works, but it's never been quite solid and fluid. He's a good athlete, but he's not a great striker. He's a great grappler, but he doesn't always get that grappling to work. Sometimes he gets a little too strike focused, I think, or a little too, I don't know. He's not a super dominant grappler. Like he actually doesn't have very many submissions over his career,
He
weirdly.
uses it defensively most often, don't you think? I mean, he's
Yeah,
a sprawling brawler.
he's pretty much a sprawling brawler. He's not like it's not really something he reaches for a lot, and he's not such a great brawler, despite being a good athlete, that I really pick him to beat a lot of high level opposition. And Warren is at this point, better than ever. He's a pretty high level fighter, and so I don't know. I mean, this is a fight I'm interested in seeing, but it is a fight I think Warren's going to win.
I agree, and I thought Galvao won the first one, and I remember thinking that he's going to be pissed off and due for another crack at Warren, but I caught the tail end of it. But I mean, I think the whole, and I guess rejuvenated or reformed Joe Warren is legit. I mean, if you think about it, the dude first came out in 2009, racked up some huge unexpected wins having no MMA experience, using only his wrestling, and pretty much has had a big name since then. And while I don't think it's quite dramatic, I mean, I think that there's notable signs of improvement everywhere with him, and it's not huge. It's just now he's an MMA fighter. His transitions are a lot better. He's still like probably anyone else with a wrestling base. If he gets his bell rung or things aren't going his way, he can get a little, I think, just obvious on his takedowns. He telegraphs some of them. But I like his striking. I like the fact that he can, use his Greco and get in the clinch and keep people there and beat them up for a while, rather than always dropping levels and always be in pursuit of that takedown. And on the ground, his submission grappling, I don't expect any like flying omoplatas or whatever. But what I really like is his understanding of submission grappling slash jujitsu is evident because he's looking to pass now. And for a ground and pounder, I've always thought still look to pass. Punch, and when they start defending the punches, look to pass. When they start defending the pass, look to punch. And I think that can. It's too bad he's as old as he is right now, because he started out fresh, without a whole lot of experience, looking really good, and now I mean I think dramatic improvement. So, um, how old is Joe Warren now? Is he 30?
He's 38.
Wow. Well, Joe Warren. So I would probably pick him in this one too. Um, Galvao is the kind of dude. I mean, he just throws boulders. He's a little bit sloppy, a little bit wild, and can be a little bit predictable with it. And I think that's going to be his downfall. He is tough as hell in the clinch. I mean, especially if you look at how well Joe Warren's done at his credentials. There's only been a few guys, shockingly, two Brazilians come to mind, Rafael Silva and Galvao, who've done Pat Curran, of course, but have done an excellent job of stuffing his takedowns and being able to counter strike with him. Um, it's just a tall order. I mean, I think you have to sting Joe and buzz him early, to kind of get that momentum. But if Joe is all over you, swarming you, takedowns and striking, and now he has more than just that one option. Of course, Galvao could win, but I think it's just too tough to predict that he'll either finish him or be able to do it consistently for all 3 rounds.
Yeah, or five in this case. But yeah,
Good call.
I mean, Warren's a much better. I mean, it's weird. Like I was saying, is that for being 38, he's pretty much having the prototypical MMA prospect career. I mean,
That,
except that he came
still
out
quite a
like
bit.
hot fire out of the gate, but otherwise, it's 6 years in, and he looks better than ever. And he keeps that up. He'll have like a decade-long MMA career, be done in his early 40s, and that'll be it. You know.
I was trying to stammer that point out and did a bad job of it, but you're right. He's doing everything a prospect should do, except for being able to reap the fruits of his labor. He's only going to have a couple years left to enjoy it, but I guess better late than never.
Yeah.
Betting odds: Joe Warren is the favorite. I think deservedly so. Minus two, almost minus 230 as an average across the board. Galvao, the underdog, plus almost an average of plus 180s, plus 175 on one site, plus 190 on the other one. And those are, I think, some pretty well done odds because I think it kind of hopefully mirrors what we just said. Galvao is, just wild and vicious enough that he'd take anyone's head off. But if all things go as planned, I think Joe Warren's a pretty safe and steady pick.
Yeah.
Um, anything else you have to add? Any other tidbits, MMA knowledge,
No,
premium
I mean, I think
picks?
that's it. This, like I say, this isn't, that otherwise amazing of a card. It's not bad, but yeah, it's not an exciting card. I was actually just got done going over the World Series of Fighting card, and while that card doesn't, also has nothing to offer on the undercard whatsoever, it's actually got I would almost say, if not a better main card, every bit as good a one.
Who else? It's Palomino versus Gaethje, right?
Yeah,
Title.
Palomino Gagey is the main event, and then oh god, I just went over this thing, but
While you're looking, I've always thought Palomino is one of the most. It's hard to call him underrated, but he's the kind of guy a lot of people have, mistakenly taken a tune-up fight against, and he's, put him out. I mean, George Masvidal. And actually, I'm really high on Gaethje too. So it's not a knock, but what were your thoughts on that? I think that's going to be competitive. I would not be surprised to see
I
Palomino pull that out.
yeah, I would not be surprised at all if Palomino wins it. It's a big question mark fight for me because Palomino's really, for as long as he's been around, he's really still in the prime of his career, and in a way that Giard wasn't necessarily, and Gagey did have problems in that fight. Like that wasn't a clean and dominant performance from him, and he tends to put his head down and really just like throw caution to the wind and throw himself off balance. And I'm not sure if that will keep Palomino himself off balance or if that's just going to give him a lot of opportunities to throw those devastating sort of one-off wild attacks he has that can knock anybody out. So it's a big question mark fight. But yeah, let's see. Otherwise, that fight has Ed West versus Timur Valiev, which is a good fight. Young light heavyweights, Jake Kuhn versus Teddy Holder, and then Thiago Silva, Matt Hamill. So it's not like a
Oh, that's right. I
better
forgot.
card, but it's about as good.
Name recognition, it's better. I mean, as far
Yeah.
as just names. And I actually would be interested in watching, Tiago Silva, the evil Sith Lord. I mean, I'm always down to watch him fight. In the Hamill, so that's a good matchup. Um, is Jake Hune related to Connor Hune?
I'm not actually sure. I would assume so. I would assume that they're brothers.
And what was it? Oh, and I didn't realize that Ed West moved from Bellator over to. And I'm
Yep.
actually kind of glad to see him around. Good, really good dude, a talented dude. He finally got a sweet knockout. I think it was maybe a front leg side kick or whatever, but good cat. It's good to see him still getting some airtime. So actually, overall, I think the point would be, for a while I gave up on World Series of Fighting because their shows were, you know, way too few and far between. And then they finally had one I was kind of excited for it, and that's when they had that whole fiasco about the cage didn't meet
Hmm.
regulations at the last minute, and they thought so. I was like, okay, I'm kind of over that. But hey, perfect time for him. I mean, if there's any truth, to what we kind of suspected that maybe Bellator is planed out or losing a little some of the momentum that they had. Good time for World Series of Fighting, and that's the kind of card to keep people watching. Is that on Friday or Saturday?
That's on Saturday. So this one's on Friday. The World Series of Fighting card's on Saturday.
So I got to say, for a non-UFC week, it's probably the best we can hope for. Bellator Friday night, World Series of Fighting Saturday night, and I don't know if common watchers or new watchers, even if sometimes we don't praise all the fighters or all the cards. I mean, I still love MMA. I'll watch both of these events and probably enjoy them. So just a little positive message to send us off there. All right, I'm good unless you are.
Oh yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Follow Zane if you choose to, if you are so inclined, at the Zane Simon on Twitter. I'm at Uncle Justice. What's up next on the docket for us next week? UFC something? Is it
Yeah, that's
Lamas
UFC
Mendes?
Fairfax. Mendez versus Lamas is next week.
Quinton Masvidal. That should
Yep.
actually that should be a good card. So, and I think isn't Alec Yakovlev coming back for that one?
You is he?
We could look, but that I don't know if we want to go through all that trouble.
Yeah.
Yakovlev, Gray Maynard. Is
Oh
that right?
yeah. Yeah, I'm
No
actually
shit.
that's a fun fight. I actually I would favor Yakovlev in that fight, but it'll be interesting.
Actually, now that I'm looking at it, sweet matchups.
Yep.
Juliana Pena versus Milena Dudieva. That'll be a barn burner. Clay Guida, Robbie Peralta, Dustin Poirier coming back. Sweet. All right, so we'll have some good shit to talk about next weekend. Thanks for watching, everyone. Give us a like if you choose to. Other than that, thanks for watching. Have a good weekend, everybody.